Cardiff, the capital of Wales, a city steeped in rugby, football and national pride. But in the mid-1980s, something very different began to take root, a sport almost entirely unknown to the Welsh public: ice hockey. From the birth in the mid-1980s to the heights of the 90s, the big budget Super League, near collapse, rebirth in a tent, and finally a triumphant return to glory, the Devils have done it all. This is the story of one of Britain's most resilient and most decorated hockey clubs. This is the story of the Cardiff Devils. Cardiff Devils were born in the summer of 1986. Their new home, the Wales National Ice Rink, had just been built, and local businessman Bob Phillips and Sports Nationwide saw an opportunity. They brought in John Lawless, a Canadian forward who would act not only as player-coach, but as salesman, recruiter and club builder. The early days were raw. The Devils started life in Division 2 of the British Leagues, and the roster was a mix of Canadian imports like Perry Oliver and Bill Taylor, alongside local talent and Lawless himself. On October 12, 1986, the Devils played their very first game, a challenge match against the Oxford City Stars. Few in the building that night could have guessed what was coming next, because the Devils weren't content to survive, they wanted to win. The first official home game came on 30th of November 1986. Cardiff faced the Ashfield Islanders. Over 2,500 fans turned up, many of them curious newcomers. They witnessed a demolition. The Devils won 32-0. It was a statement. Cardiff hockey had arrived. Lawless worked tirelessly to grow the fan base. Promotions, outreach in schools, and an aggressive on-ice style helped turn casual fans into diehards. And within just a few years, Cardiff had risen rapidly through the divisions. By the late 1980s, Lawless wanted more than just survival. He wanted to win, and he wasn't afraid to make big moves. In 1987, he added Jeff Smith in goal, plus defenseman Shannon Hope. Both players would become pillars of the team. Then came the signings that shocked British hockey. In 1988-89, Cardiff recruited Steve Morra, already one of the UK's most gifted forwards, along with Cooper brothers Ian and Stephen, prized away from the powerhouse Durham Wasps. These signings transformed the Devils overnight, but they also attracted criticism. Other clubs accused Cardiff of checkbook hockey, buying success rather than building it. Lawless didn't care. He wanted trophies. Some would argue the defining moment of Cardiff's early history came in the 1989-90 season. The Devils had gone unbeaten in the league until December, steamrolling opponents and claiming their first Premier Division title. But it was the playoff final at Wembley that sealed their legend. The Cardiff Devils would face off against the mighty Murrayfield Racers, led by Tony Hand, Britain's greatest ever player. The Racers stormed into a 3-0 lead, and for most teams it would have been over. But the Devils responded with a furious comeback. In just 105 seconds, Ian Cooper, Doug McEwen and Steve Morra struck to level the game. In goal, Jeff Smith stood tall. Smith later recalled that Lawless had told him when he signed, "I want to build the team around the goalie, build from the back out," and that night it all came true. The game went into overtime, then a penalty shootout, and when Smith denied Tony Hand's shot, Wembley erupted. The Cardiff Devils were playoff champions, and with the game broadcast live on BBC Grandstand, suddenly the Devils were no longer just a Welsh curiosity, they were a national story. The Wembley triumph sparked a golden era. In 1993 and 1994, Cardiff followed up with back-to-back league championships. The Devils weren't just another team anymore, they were a powerhouse. The scoring touch of Hilton Ruggles and the relentless energy of Nicky Chin made Cardiff the envy of the league. Behind them, the calm presence of Frank Evans and Doug Small added the kind of depth and experience few British teams could match. Crowds at the Wales National Ice Rink swelled. Cardiff had built something extraordinary, a hockey culture in the heart of rugby country. In the early to mid-1990s, no team in Britain matched their consistency. Their fiercest rivals were the Sheffield Steelers, Nottingham Panthers, and the Ayr Eagles defined the era. Fierce battles that filled arenas and wrote chapters in British hockey folklore. In 1996, British hockey underwent a huge change. The Ice Hockey Super League was born, a bold attempt to professionalise the sport and raise the standard with full-time imports. Many clubs struggled, Cardiff adapted, and in 1997 the Devils lifted the Super League Championship, proving they could still compete at the highest level. Key figures like Steve Thornton and Brent Pope carried the team, and a new fresh-faced Stevie Lyle straight from school to the ice, but financial pressures loomed. The Super League was expensive, and by the early 2000s, cracks began to show. In 2001, disaster struck. The Cardiff Devils went bankrupt, and for a moment, it seemed like the story was over. When the original Cardiff Devils franchise was liquidated in 2001, it felt like the curtain had fallen on one of the British hockey's greatest stories. But in Cardiff, the passion for the game ran too deep to fade. With much scorn and scrutiny, a new club rose under the ownership of Bob Phillips, who would guide the club into the new Elite League era. Those early 2000s were unstable. Coaches and players came and went. Finances were tight, and that spark that once made the Devils unstoppable seemed to flicker. Attendance games dramatically reduced, but through it all, the hardcore passionate fans stayed, still chanting, still believing, and the crowds would finally return. Then came another heartbreak. In 2006, the Wales National Ice Rink, the Devils' home for 2 decades, was demolished to make way for a new development. The Save Our Rink Action Committee formed to lead calls from the city's ice hockey clubs and fans for a temporary facility to be constructed while a more permanent building was finally built. Successfully, a temporary arena was built in Cardiff Bay, a bright blue corrugated structure the fans affectionately nicknamed the Big Blue Tent. It was far from glamorous. The walls shook on windy nights and the cold bit hard in winter, yet somehow it was perfect. It felt like home. Just months later, after moving in, the Devils wrote a new chapter of their history. In 2006, they captured the Challenge Cup, beating the Coventry Blaze on penalties. Nathan Rample's hat-trick and Rajon Stringer's shootout winner delivered one of the most emotional moments in modern club history. The years that followed were defined by heart, grit, and characters who carried the badge with pride. Brad Voth became the face of the franchise, a captain as fierce as he was loyal. Alongside him, players like Phil Hill, Max Braber, and Jared Adams brought toughness and skill, forging a team that refused to be an easy night for anyone. Leadership passed to Mark Richardson in 2010, whose quiet consistency and commitment steadied the Devils through off-ice uncertainty. The tent might have been temporary, but became a symbol of everything Cardiff hockey stood for: community, loyalty, and sheer determination. By 2014, the winds of change were blowing again. The Big Blue Tent had served its purpose, and now the Devils were ready to step back into the spotlight. A new era awaited, one that would take Cardiff from survival to supremacy, and there was only one man for the job. Some would say the real turning point came in 2014. A new ownership group took control, bringing Todd Kelman in as managing director. Kelman had been part of the successful Belfast Giants organisation, and he knew how to build a winner. On the ice, Kelman appointed Andrew Lord as player coach. Lord wasn't just a tactician. He embodied the relentless, hard-working style that Devils fans loved. Success returned quickly, and in 2015 the Devils lifted the Challenge Cup. It was just the start. Over the next few years, Cardiff became the dominant force in the Elite League. In 2016-17, they became league champions and Challenge Cup winners. In 2017-18, another league crown plus the playoff title, an historic double. And in 2018-19, they fell just short of the league but lifted the playoff trophy again. Players like Joey Martin, Andrew Hotham, Ben Bowens, and of course Mark Richardson became legends in the modern era. In 2020, the Cardiff Devils looked set to add another championship banner to their growing collection in the rafters. The roster was deep, a blend of experience and hungry new faces like Matt Pope, Blair Riley and Stephen Dixon. They built momentum all season, playing a trademark high-tempo, hard-nosed style. But just as the title race was reaching its climax, the world stopped, COVID-19 hit, and British hockey fell silent. Cardiff sat top of the Elite League standings, but the season was cancelled. No champions, no playoffs, just uncertainty. The following year brought more of the same. The 2020-2021 campaign was scrapped entirely, no Devils, no Red Army, no hockey at all. And when the Elite League returned in 2021-2022, the Devils were a different team, battle-tested but with something to prove. Jared Scald took over as head coach, joined by a new wave of talent, Brandon McNally and Trevor Cox, whose creativity quickly made him a fan favourite. Between the pipes, Matt Carruth provided stability, producing highlight reel performances that kept Cardiff in contention during a turbulent season. By spring, the reins shifted again. Former player Brodie DuPont, alongside long-time assistant Neil Francis, guided Devils into playoffs, and in true Cardiff fashion, they peaked at just the right time. Led by the steady leadership of Josh Batch and the scoring touch of Cole Sanford, the Devils went all the way, lifting the 2022 playoff championship in Nottingham. It was a symbolic win, a statement that Cardiff's competitive fire had survived the pandemic intact. 2023 marked another turning point. The Devils unveiled a new visual identity, a refreshed logo, sleek watermark, and the debut of Devils Pitchfork. It was a modern Cardiff, sharper, confident and forward-looking, but still built on the same fierce pride that had driven the team since 1986. 2025 is when history was made. The Devils hosted the IIHF Continental Cup final on home ice and delivered in spectacular fashion. Cardiff stormed through Europe's best to claim their first ever European trophy. It wasn't just a title, it was validation, a moment decades in the making, born from persistence, passion and pride. Nearly 40 years after their formation, the Cardiff Devils had conquered Europe. Through lockdowns, new eras and changing faces, one thing had stayed the same: their resilience. Because in Cardiff, no matter the challenge, the fire never goes out. From that first 32-0 win in 1986 to European triumph in 2025, the Cardiff Devils story is one of evolution, of resilience, reinvention and relentless ambition. They've been called many things over the years: dreamers, disruptors, champions. But through every era, from Lawless to Kelman, Devils have embodied something deeper: the spirit of a city that refuses to stand still. Legends like Shane Hope, Doug McEwen, Mark Richardson and Joey Martin have written their names into club folklore, each representing a different chapter of the story. Some of those jerseys hang proudly above the ice, reminders of how far Cardiff has come and of the standards expected from those who wear the red. Now under the head coach Paul Thompson, the Devils continue to evolve. New heroes are emerging, new rivalries are forming, and new dreams are being chased. Because in Cardiff, hockey isn't just a sport, it's an identity. And through every era, they've flown on the wings of an army.